Good evening, everyone. And first of all, everybody hear me because I'm great for numbering, which is probably aware. Welcome to Stanley Town Council's Finance and General Purpose Committee meeting. This meeting is taking place on Tuesday, the 12th of April 2022 at 6:30 p.m. at the Stanley City Hall. And it's being recorded, it will be downloaded to YouTube, so be aware it will be available for a minimum of 6 months. So the footage from the meetings could be used for media broadcast. I'm Gordon Binney, Chair of the Finance and General Purpose Committee, and would like to extend a warm welcome to members, officers, members of the public, media, who at some stage will be watching this recording of this event.
I think you should rephrase that. You don't need to get a warm welcome.
Well, it's a salient point. So we'll move on to the first item, which is apologies for absence. Are you aware of any apologies for absence?
We've had apologies for absence from Councillor Alan Jones and Councillor Joe Lackawan.
Are the members of the committee willing to accept the apologies? Okay, then we'll move on to item 2, which is declarations of interest. Has any members got anything to declare with regards to the items on the current agenda? Councillors?
I am Vice Chair for Kiss and Cry and so declare an interest.
Yeah, that's item 9, isn't it? Okay. Move on to item 3, which is any announcements from the Chair, which you'll be pleased to hear there isn't any, and then from the Councillor. Public participation, I'm sure. Do we have any? Either in person, no, or Zoom? Okay, then we can move on to item 5, which is confirmation of the minutes. So here the committee to approve as a correct record the minutes of the Finance and General Purpose Committee meeting held on the 8th of March, attachment E. Does anyone have anything to say about the minutes, or if not, do we have a mover? I'm second. The committee happy to confirm the minutes? Move on to item 6, which is accounts for payment and bank reconciliation. The committee has to consider the attachments, the payments, receipts, and also bank balances, attachments B, C, and D. Any comments? Councillor Hanson?
Can I move that we take them as one item, and can I move that we accept them?
Okay, does everybody have a second for that?
I second.
Okay, everybody okay for that? Yes. Moving on to item 7, I believe Anne is going to respond to the residents' query regarding tax bills.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We received a council query regarding the increase in precept and how it was shown on the particular your personal council bill. So we checked it out to check why the reason it was shown as 1.3% rather than the precept increase of 2.5%, and it was, although our precept has increased overall by 2.5%, it was due to the increase in the tax base, which kept it at 1.3 on the personal bills. And I just thought it was raised by a councillor, and I thought it would be of interest to quite a few people. So thank you, Councillor Chun, for raising that.
Thank you. Anyone want to add anything to that? Good question, Councillor Tony.
It's all the strange 1.3.
Move on to item 8, which is a civic hall update. I think Councillor Oscar will report to give to the committee.
Thank you, Chair. It's really just to sort of update the meeting about what's been happening within the Civic Hall since the last time we met. Obviously you'll note tonight it's still quite fresh, so we still haven't got any heating. There have been lots of conversations happening behind the scenes, and I've met with one of the cabinet members at Durham, and we're waiting for them to come back to us. Councillor Jo Nicholson, she's also had some discussion as well with DCC, so we're waiting for Councillor Jo Nicholson's waiting for feedback on those discussions as well. In the meantime, we've had a surveyor out to come and just look at the building in general. She's taken her findings away in a number of photographs. We've also had an independent heating engineer out who has provided us with a quote to have one industrial boiler put back into the boiler house with a new flue, and that industrial boiler would be able to be fitted into any other system that we may have to put in, but it would be with a view to getting some heat to the building. And bearing in mind the building has been only running on one boiler for a considerable period of time before it was condemned, it might be that that works. So that quote has been sent over to Durham County Council because they have to approve any works, any major works that are done in the building. So that was done last week, and I did actually chase that yesterday, but I'm yet to hear back. Unfortunately, the Louisa Centre has been having some, I'm saying unfortunately, the Louisa Centre has been having some work on their roof, and they've had some scaffolding outside of the building. We came in last Monday morning to one of our theatre windows being broken, and we presume our youths had been onto the roof and thrown pieces of scaffolding through our theatre windows. So currently we have one of those boarded up, and we're waiting, because it's a specific size, we've had to have it measured specifically, so we are waiting for a piece of glass to come to replace that. I did speak to the Louisa Centre on that occasion, and they said the work had been finished for a number of weeks, and they'd been trying to have the scaffold removed because they'd had some issues. Then unfortunately last Thursday, one of the ceilings came down in one of the committee rooms due to a significant leak. So obviously this ceiling tiles, when they get wet, they just crumble away and they fall. So we've lost half of the ceiling in one of the committee rooms downstairs. We had to obviously have that fixed because it's not only is it health and safety, it was just going to create further damage if we left it the way it was. We got Durham County Council out, and what they found on the roof was further scaffolding posts and scaffolding joints that had obviously been taken from the site, put up onto there for whatever reason to be used for at a later date. They'd also been trying to remove the lead from around the windows. So that's that site on the roof. So obviously we removed the scaffolding that was up there. We've had that part of the roof fixed. And obviously the room is dried out, but obviously we are going to have to replace the ceiling. I've been back to see the Louisa Centre and advised them again that it's going to be very costly to them if they don't have the scaffold removed. We did report it to the police, both the window being broken and them being back on the roof again. And there was nothing that they could do because there was no CCTV. And unfortunately our alarm didn't activate either. So they're going to have the alarm looked at as well. We know the alarm works because it has gone off very recently, so it's not that it doesn't work, it's just potentially wasn't touching that sensor. So today the scaffolding has been removed eventually, so hopefully that might stop any further damage being done to the roof or any of our windows. However, there is no real sort of maintenance budget for all of these things. So Anne and I have had some quite lengthy discussions because we need to keep the building safe, we need to keep it secure. There are some items of repair that need to be done for health and safety reasons. So Anne and I have had quite a bit of discussion around budgets. So the previous clerk set aside a budget for 21-22 for planned works that haven't gone ahead, and are probably in most cases now not a priority if the truth be known. So in the 2021 budget, 2022 budget, there was 50,000 for civic hall projects, there was 6,500 for plan maintenance, and there was 20,000 put aside for repairs and maintenance. Now there's been very little of that budget used, and you currently have pending year-end position £59,500. Now what I would propose to do is to move that underspend into an area marked, earmarked for reserves as sort of a building contingency, and obviously put together with the 2022 budget, 23 budget, which is a £72,000 budget, would give you 101,000 budget for sort of contingency for works. We would also be able to have the heating fixed to a point where it would work outside of that. If Durham were happy to go ahead with our quote for that one boiler, it would also mean that we would be able to have things like the ceiling replaced. That hasn't been paid for obviously yet. The window hasn't been paid for yet. The roof hasn't been paid for yet to the damage that's been done that caused the leak. Obviously, I will be looking to reclaim that back, but it still needs to be paid for. And it's just general other emergency repairs really that need to be done. This is not about titivating the building up, it's about keeping it safe, keeping it open and keeping it running.
You claim of the insurance for the repairs for the window and the roof.
I think what we would be doing is we would be looking to a third party to claim for the roof and the window, because had they had a secure site, they wouldn't have been, or they shouldn't have been able to obtain the items that they then through our windows. So, yes. Because what they did was they used their fencing to climb up onto our roof to take the stuff up there. So we would look to reclaim from a third party there.
Good luck with that, but
It sounds like a good idea,
It's-
but we will push it because it wouldn't have happened. I don't believe it would have happened if those items not been left lying.
Okay, thanks, Ellen.
What about radiators, putting us some new radiators, you know what? Because none of these radiators over here work properly.
Well, we haven't got a boiler system at the moment, so I think what we need to do is look at the boiler house first and try and find a remedy to the fact that the whole building hasn't got a system at the moment. And then we'll need to work through all the plans that we've talked about, meet as a full council to discuss the future of the building. And that would form part of the future of the building.
Sorry, that's great.
I don't know.
Because we just talked about getting some money out of the reserve to buy new boilers, you know?
Yeah.
We really found some money there, that's great.
Just
I don't know. I think that working that amount out, actually finding that amount, or releasing that amount, is my best bet. It really is. I'm quite happy with that. I don't know about anybody else, but it's a solution. It's a temporary solution, but it's a solution.
Thoughts, everybody?
So we do.
Yeah.
I think going forward, I think we have to, one of the first things, if we stay here, you have to genuinely think about the maintenance of this building, because for a long time, it's just not happened. No matter how much you say, it hasn't happened. You wouldn't do that in your house, so why should we do it here?
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Just to say I agree with John, then going forward, if we maintain this building, we're going to have to look at the maintenance. And I think that's a discussion that we should away from the body.
That's one point we have got.
Everybody else has gone off track. Could you repeat that? Sorry,
As I was saying, I agree with John that if we maintain this building, we are going to have to look at maintenance. I just used to say it twice essentially. But I think the discussions about maintenance and the future of this building is something that's going to have to go to the full council. We're going to have a discussion where everyone can make their views known on that. But definitely maintenance and this building is a priority.
The reason the building, the reason the building's like it is because people haven't done maintenance. And this is the subsequent use of not maintaining the property, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's an example where we're having, it's working over here that hasn't been done, because I haven't used the money for it.
Using money that
That's
should
the
be
issue,
spent.
exactly. Those against them, that's the issue. It needs to be, you wouldn't do it in your own way, you know, yourself.
You know, it's not like you haven't known for 10 years, that's why I'm going to go.
Yes.
So is there general agreement on that? We recommend that to
Yes.
full council.
Just think the struggle is
What's the name
then
of
made
the building?
Yeah.
Maintenance, yeah.
with any major works we do with this building, obviously we have the struggle of getting the approval of the county council, which kind of hamstrings us sometimes.
I'm chasing money.
However, I can't really see them objecting to us doing things that are going to benefit what is still their building.
Yeah.
You know, they're not really going to put too many.
It just creates an extra layer of food to get through.
Yeah.
If you build the stream, then do that. Okay, then, so we agree with that?
Yes, we're agreeing with that.
Put that for the council. Please. We want to item 9, which is the police van, actually. Let's basically discuss what we think we need to do with the van contract. Anyone got any?
Chair, if I could just add, obviously these vans that were supported financially by Stanley Town Council 3 years ago, they've now come to the end of their life, as in they have to be under 3 years for the police to use them, which is seems a bit mad because they're in absolutely excellent condition. But when I've looked through all of the paperwork that comes with the van's contract, unfortunately there's nothing that says in the paperwork that we would have the vans returned to us. There's nothing in the paperwork that says, that I can see anyway, that says the vans would be the sole property of the police. And there's nothing in the paperwork to say that after 3 years it would then cost £5,000 per van to run. So unfortunately, and Anne and I have had a chat about this as well, we've spent a lot of time together trying to look for this. There was never any budget put aside because obviously nobody knew that it was then going to cost £5,000 per van to keep them running. Now, I did go to the police and say to them, you know, on this basis, why don't you keep one? We'll keep one. Okay? Seemingly they can't do that because when we paid for them, we got a significant discount because they were bought by the police, so the police therefore got a significant discount. So, where we are is that we currently have one van that is already gone out. I know they're still using it because we were having the discussion. So they said, whilst we were having the discussions, they would keep it in, keep it commissioned. So that's one van, but the other van is due to go out of commission in June, the end of June this year. They both cost £5,000 if you want to keep them on the road. However, that doesn't cover if something major mechanically went wrong. You would still pay the £5,000. And then a couple of months after you paid that, if the gearbox went or something like that went, they would just be decommissioned to be taken off the road. So, that is the position that we're in relation to those funds.
So what's anybody?
Well, it's very nice to have them, but can we afford them?
Did that take that?
Yeah.
Was it, can we afford it? Have we got the funds to subsidise?
At the moment, in the budget, there's no budget set aside for it.
Well, doing well out of what study.
Alex, please, Alex, 2 seconds. Come through the chair. Sam?
Just to echo what you've been said, I don't think we can afford them. It would be nice to keep them on the road, but I wouldn't want to be spending £5,000 to keep a van on the road that in a few months might break down and we don't have use of it. So I think we're going to have to let them go at this stage. And if we ever looked at doing something similar with the police in the future, then it might be a good idea to get written into those contracts that we can take them back once they're no longer fit for police use. But with these specific vans, I think we're just going to have to let them go.
Okay. Alex, you want to say something?
No, just get out there.
Well, obviously I'm going to reiterate what everybody said, and I think unfortunately at this particular time and with everything that's happening, I think we are, but how does that affect our water service?
So then potentially, because sorry Chair, my understanding is that they will sell the vans. So is it a case of they go back to them and say, will you sell us one of your vans? Because we would need it for the warden service. But then part of me thinks you've paid £38,000 for the vans in the first place. But both of our, one of the wardens uses, we hire a van from Durham County Council, and obviously the other warden uses the van that we've supported with the police, sort of like on a 9 till 5 basis, and then they use it on an evening.
Is there any possible funding we can get externally to help us pay for these vans, you know, or even approach the PCB, see if the Steve should give us some, you know, anything. Because we don't really want to lose them. They are an asset to us and the police. I just think it's stupid just to just do nothing. But if there's other ways, you know, there's something wrong with that.
I'm not aware of the funding, I don't know if everybody else is. Would be some consequence.
I know the police have said to you that they'll get rid of the vans, but they're still running the 2 police cars, well, one of the police cars that we bought them initially. Now that is 9 years, 9 years possibly. I don't know what's happened with this contract, because the other contract with the help of the cars, we had an option to purchase the 2 vehicles when the time was up. That doesn't seem to have been an option this time. They were leased cars, that's what they were, but they were, you know, but they were built specifically for the police. And like I say, I declared an interest, but any vehicle, you know, it would be 2 vehicles the less if they've gone. Will we be in the situation that we were in before? And the reason we got the 2 cars originally was that police were driving around to packed meetings and to diary events, you know, diary visits to houses in great big vans, and it was greener to have a smaller car, and that was the whole idea at the time. I think it's going to be a bit lean with that information to us.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was going to say. If we just turned around and said, unfortunately, times are tight, we can't, it'll be interesting what exactly is going to happen to those vans, because I can't see them getting rid of them. I seriously can't see. And I don't like, I'm not saying they are, but it feels a little bit as if we're being held over a bit of a barrel.
So should we take the original stance of what we're seeing at this moment in time we can't afford to pay for the occasion for that?
I think it's horrendous that we can't do it because
Anything you
we've
can do.
done it for the last 8-10 years, whatever it is, and the council as a whole. I think it would be a shame, but I just think clearly, and I certainly wasn't aware, I thought at the end of this, the same as at the end of the previous one, that there would have been hours or there would have been some sort of a small payment like there was with the last ones, and clearly one of them is still very much in service. So I just think it's, you know, we know ourselves when we're struggling financially, and I just think we can't.
What if I go back to I will speak to the fleet depot and I'll basically say we haven't got the money as much as we would like to. What are the options? And then I don't like the words bluff them.
No. Well, no, it's not a case of that, is it? It's an unfortunate circumstance that we find ourselves in, and we just don't have expendable cash, unfortunately.
I think at the moment there are so many other things that are sadly a priority. And as much as I think the town council would love to support this, the priority isn't quite that at the moment.
Thank you. Is that the course of action then? We go back and see at this moment in time, is there anything that can accommodate us in any way? In the meantime, I suppose you could say there's any grants available we could tap into. Support. So you want to kill that?
Yeah.
Councillor?
Just quickly on the sort of looking for money and all, David mentioned talking to the PCBC, I think with a focus on antisocial behaviour, it might be an interesting angle to go in and say that sort of like you lose these two vans with a bit of an antisocial behaviour hotspot, and perhaps you should look at helping us out to keeping these vans.
Especially as you've got a resource there which is proven resource. So it's probably strength to the argument in that case.
Yeah.
Anyone have any thoughts? Yeah. Move on to item 10. Which is the Study Community Fund report and funding proposals, attachments F and G. Things has to receive and consider the report. Any thoughts on the report? Anyone?
Obviously I sit on this fund, and there's one thing that sticks out, the way that they're doing how they're proportioning what spend we've got. They're doing it divisionally, not ward. They're doing it by county council division, not Stanley Town Council ward. I don't know whether it's something that we could actually ask them if they could split it down. Because obviously the fund is a Stanley Town Council fund, it isn't a county council. In the odd, as I say, I've noticed that it's coming out as 4 divisions, not 7 wards. And I just think for transparency it would be more, you know, from the different areas to be able to see.
Yeah, because it's highlighted why certain
Yeah,
wards aren't asking for
yeah. Yeah, so I just think that was one thing. And another thing, I know it may not be the right time to bring this up, but obviously we're giving somebody 50 grand to administer a fund, and they're charging us 7.5. And I just think under the current circumstances, I would personally think it's a very good practice. You know, I'm not saying that they haven't done some good stuff, and I'm not saying that they haven't, you know, given out some good grants, and I know that there's a lot more grants being given out on the back of this, but I'm sure that there would still be available money, and there would still be other funding available, even if we were to take the money back in and administer it ourselves.
One of the appeals of this fund, wasn't it? We would leverage to be able to bring in
It is, but I think when you look at a lot of them, and I know that there's lots of people have had money very, rightfully so, and are doing good things with it, and then they've gone on to get money from other CDCF funding. But I don't think that would go away. Still think the CDCF funding would still all be available out there. I just don't know what people think, but I just don't know whether, again, because we're looking at our pennies, whether it's something that we possibly should consider.
Just to pick up, I think I like the fund, and I know there are issues with it, but I think the money it brings into Stanley is quite useful. I take what Helen says about there being other funding available, but the attraction of this for me is the fact that it's just based in Stanley. It's for projects in Stanley and just Stanley, and I think given the amount of money it's brought in on top of what we've put in, it is a good resource to have. However, my concern is that they're asking for us to commit for another 3 years, and I don't think we can agree to that at this point because of our financial trouble. No, trouble's the wrong word, our financial situation. So I would like to see the fund to continue, but I would propose that we go back and we say we'll agree to funding for the first year, but at this time we can't commit to a 3-year agreement.
Yeah, through you, Jane. It is in the budget this year. This year's is budgeted for the money that's got. It is budgeted for this for next year. Yes, for the year coming.
Just if it has been budgeted for, I think we should give them the money for at least that year.
So therefore, got a year, and at which, well, not at which point, before that, we've got time to look at it again in detail and really sort of go down into what we're being charged and why.
Do you want to ask them to come to full council if you'd like to present?
No.
Yes. With the committee one, that's good. Yes. Sorry, Councillor Nicholson.
As opposed to Sam, I'm not particularly happy. Obviously, my ward hasn't applied, and the reason they haven't applied is, and I've asked people, no one knows what it's on. Nobody's getting any information, nothing. So my question to CDCF is, how do they contact, or what contact have they made with groups? How do you sell it them? So you have to know. You have to know.
The previous applicants, they were the go-to, ask them if they want more money.
So that would mean if it's previous applicants, that means that somebody who hasn't never applied will never get.
Yeah.
And that's the logic that I struggle with.
I think it would be well worthwhile into the full council and answer that question. Simply in light of the fact that estimates we've got to probably for a further 2 years, so you should be listening to this. If they ever want to listen, we will come to them. So, yes.
Also, would there be any, would it be worth considering if we did go ahead and fund it, whether to reduce the funding? Because we pay a substantial percentage, don't we? So it may be still funded, but maybe look at reducing fund our contribution. Just a thought.
Again, that would be useful to discuss.
For me, this is only me. I'd be quite happy for each councillor to have £1,000 and the 40,000 or whatever the difference is. So it's 20 councillors, that's £20,000. So you would know that each in the wards that have got more than one councillor have more money. And I wouldn't imagine that would be very difficult to manage, as in within this town council. And the surplus goes back into the council funds. And I've always been an advocate. We're not a funder. That's not what we're here for. That's not what Stanley Town Council is.
And I understand what's been said about each member having their own funds, but I think we, in a way, are a funder. We are here to support local people, and this fund has brought in more money than we ourselves could give out. We put in £150,000 over 3 years, and we ended up with £300,000 of funding in the Stanley Fund. This fund has brought in an extra 150,000, or at least around that much, over 3 years. So I would say it's done its job. I know there are issues around how it's promoted and how people go to it for money, but I would say it's done its job, at least in part.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Sam, but will that funding not still be there? You know, if we think ours, will that funding not be still available to get in other ways or other avenues through the CDCF?
Yes, but that would be county-wide money. This is a fund specifically for Stanley.
Yeah.
Should we not have extra money in Stanley?
Well, yeah, but should we not get county money for Stanley as well?
Well, yes, and we do, but we should also have our own money that we can bring an extra investment. What's the problem with that?
But I'm still...
An extra £150,000 over 3 years.
Yeah. Can you guarantee that that would disappear? If we didn't put ours in, would that...
That money wouldn't be there if we hadn't created the Stanley Fund. It's all well and good going to other pots in the County Down Foundation, but this money was just for Stanley, and we have gained money for Stanley.
That probably have to have a discussion.
I mean, that's just my view.
Yeah.
Well, obviously I've gone to quite a few of the meetings, as have you. And it isn't quite how it works. Basically, they're saying that we've had £300,000 worth of money. And yes, we have, but quite a bit of that money would have been available anyway. So what they do is we go and we've got all our different people who come in, and then we'll sometimes say, well, actually, we'll just leave that bit. If you go to somewhere else, you can get it somewhere else. So, but then they're still including it in Stanley. So it's a bit of a weird one, because I've quite enjoyed my time on the fund, on seeing what they've done and things like that. But I still think that if we were to withdraw, and I'm not saying, you know, immediately or whatever, if we do the year, you know, whatever everybody decides to do. But now that we know that it exists, we know that CDCF exists, I don't think they would just put the shutters down on anybody going from Stanley. You know, I think that they know us all now, they know a lot of our groups and everything, and I think they would support them regardless whether there was a Stanley Fund or not. And the idea of a Stanley Fund at the beginning was a really, really good idea. But I just think the administration cost is quite a lot for the money that we do put in. And unfortunately, the first year was really quite good. But I mean, AAP put 20 grand in, but that's Stanley money anyway, and it should be being used within Stanley anyway. PCVC put, I think, was it 10 the first year? But then that significantly dropped the following years, as did our the MP. He put money in, which is all great, and commend them for all of that. But that has significantly dropped to virtually us in the AAP being the contributors. We even had in the first years, we had commitments from people in Stanley, the shops and things, but that's gone as well. And it is now just fallen to Stanley, the council, with the AAP, which, as I say, that AAP money for me should be being used in the Stanley area anyway. So I just think it is something that we do need to have a look at, and I think there is quite a bit of the money that they could apply for, and yes, I understand it's a Durham-wide thing, but why shouldn't the people of Stanley get money from the Durham-wide thing, as well as money from our own town council, if that's available?
If we were to go ahead, I agree, I think we should get them to come and answer some of these questions directly, but if we were to go ahead and put in the money that's in the budget for this year, can we not sort of build into that we want some better publicity so we can reach the sort of people that John mentioned, and see if we can put that in as a condition of them having our money this year, to say we need to reach the wider Stanley area to make sure that it's being dished out fairly.
Sorry, just one thing. I mean, obviously, I know it. You know, you can go from 2,000 to 10,000, which is great. But what happens to some of the little communal groups that maybe only want 50 quid or only want £100? And we do have some little groups that may well, it might be enough for them to get 50 quid's worth of, you know, I don't know, selection boxes at Christmas. And obviously we could use our mix when we have those. And I think that's what Joan's alluding to with maybe having a small amount for councillors. Because obviously we could do that, but obviously some of the groups, they don't want £2,000. You know, to them it's a lot of money. They might only want something for a trip or something for a tea party or something, and obviously we've lost that little bit of looking at our local communities.
I mean, I might be wrong, but I believe alongside the Standing Fund we're also going to have the small grants pot as well. So for groups that would just need that little bit of money, would that not be where that should come from?
We did have that originally, but that's gone.
Yeah, and that could be a broader thing as well, what we're talking about here in terms of how the people who require small funding in the community, how we get access to it, and whether the current systems are available, which is the neighbourhood grants funds that we have, the MIF funds, you know, the strategic grants funds, how we maybe communicate that and probably refine them so that we'll be more successful to these groups. So I think that what I'm picking up the general consensus is we should give them in, look at the idea of continuing for the first, since the money's available, get them in and see if we can address some of these issues in terms of why certain groups are sort of are not accessing the fund or why they're not even made aware of it, and we could tackle that. And I think we do have a discussion with them in front of the full council. That's probably the way forward, I would think. Don't you agree with that?
I'd love to fund everybody with everything. I have to tell you that. We can't fund ourselves. You know, with no disrespect, this is the very time we should be just sitting a little bit blinkered and saying, right, do you know what, we really need to take a look at ourselves and what we're doing, and that £50,000 might be a contribution to your central heating.
Yeah, you're right.
And for me, I'd love the county to say there was, John, you can have it all. But if they don't say that to us and they say you need to make a contribution, where we're going to get it from, that's my worry.
That was Helen's contingency, the money that has he pulled together. I mean, that will serve us for this year, but I know where you're coming from with that one, with the rest of it. But if we're just looking at funding this the next year and getting the answers from them, and then we can decide. But as you say, I'm quite in agreement. We've got to look internally, if you like. We've got to look to our own systems, our own way of running things, and keep the money in-house if we can. I don't know what would replace it with, because it does do an awful lot of good, an awful lot of people have had money from it. But I'm totally with you, Joan, on the business of small grants. The small grants, £1,000 in the great scheme of things might not sound a lot to the county, but it might mean the difference between something closing, a little group closing down, because they can't access £200. That's the difference. That's so I'm quite having to have somebody come in and try and explain this. So if they come, can we all come with lots of questions? That's all. Suppose we can actually get somebody to come.
As I say, in my personal opinion, I think the fund's done a lot of good and I'd like to see it continue. I'm happy for us to have them come in, us ask them questions to justify it and to look at how we can improve the fund or restructure it if we feel we want to do something different. But I think given that we already set it aside in the budget and the amount of good work that the fund has done, I believe we should continue to fund it for this year, or the next year, I should say. And then we should look at how we can possibly fund it in the future based on our own financial situation.
Okay.
Just going back to what Sam said, when you said about the small grants fund, is that a county fund or is that a town council fund? Because we're not all county councils, haven't all got access to that fund.
I was meaning the small grants fund that the town council had at one point.
Oh, that was like
Yeah.
a year ago.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would say it would be interesting to look at if we could bring something like that back.
Right. Okay, yeah, I just...
When times are better.
So can we agree how we'll go forward? And the proposal at the moment would be to continue with for this year since it's funded, bring them in to the full council and have a discussion around the issues that we've been raised in terms of accessing the fund, how the fund could develop the improvements as far as Stanley's concerned, because personally what I agree, I think it's a useful fund. I enjoy being on it. I like the idea that the leverage of money that it brings in, and which it has to prove it's done that. So I agree with that, understand the concerns from the table. So that's what I propose. Are you okay to propose that situation going forward, to bring that to full council for the decision and discussion? Move on to item 11, which is events. I remind you, but I'm talking about do so.
The events group was a very small gathering on the 23rd of March. Very small gathering. There was myself, Councillor Farron and Scott Philby. So at that meeting we went through the budgets for the Jubilee Plain Parks. We talked about on Forces Day and the events that that yourselves had planned in, just to ensure that the budget that had been set aside for it was going to be enough. I think Scott had been a little bit concerned with the increase in costs of lots of different things, that we might not have been able to produce the same level of event as the last time. However, we can, because the budget is going to be more than enough. I have caught up with him since then, because obviously at the last meeting you yourselves talked about moving on Forces Day from the bank holiday weekend to another day in the diary. And Scott has suggested the 21st of August, which is a week before the original date that was given, in the hope that attendance would be better. I'll do an Alan Tubman and say the pantomime is all sorted and booked in. And as soon as we get the opportunity to advertise it, obviously Reese, the producer, he's doing his own advertising this year. He's committed to it. We will jump on the back of it, but he will lead on it. So, really, that is the events. That was it. I would encourage a bigger attendance, because I do think it's important.
Just for clarification, did you mean the minus Sunday, not on Forces Day?
Sorry, minus.
I just had a little wobble there.
No, sorry.
Minus
On Forces Day is part of
I've actually written
I do apologise, because we've been talking about on Forces Day today, and I've thrown that on the piece of paper. Sorry, minus Sunday, my apologies. I knew it didn't feel right.
Okay,
Minus
so,
Sunday.
okay, is anyone going to say it, or do we just know that before? I apologise for this. It's the first meeting I missed.
You did think.
Oh, I'm very worried about it.
I don't know why I wasn't there. Right, okay. If everybody's happy with that, move on to the nice part, which is the date and venue for the next meeting. which is the Tuesday the 10th of May, 6:30 PM in Stanley City Hall. For Manchester. And I have a meeting there.
So,